Hello, I am Sarah Weger. I'm a wife, I'm a mom, and I'm the youngest of 8 kids in our Hudson family. There's 4 boys and 4 of us girls, and I live up here in Seattle with my family. And this is my dad. This is Bill Hudson.
Hello.
My dad recently self-published his memoir on Amazon.com, Setting Life's Course, Discovering Value and Purpose. And I've read it. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I had many laughs as I was reading it. And I also had to tell my dad afterwards that it felt like the history lessons I wish I had all through school. It was funny. It was heartfelt. I learned a lot about life in the 50s, the 60s, my parents' generation. And I told my dad, I felt like his book really bridged the gap between my parents' generation and my own. So I highly recommend it to any adult and any teenager, really. This is why I've asked my dad to discuss his book in depth in a series of episodes. But my dad, given the fact he hasn't said a word other than hello at this point, is definitely an introvert, I would say. And he needed a lot of coaxing to get to this point. And so before we get into the book itself, I wanted to introduce my dad and ask him to step outside his comfort zone maybe and give us some personal background.
Thank you, Sarah. And she probably says she's the youngest of 8 children, and I've always enjoyed being with Sarah. Yeah, I'm now 77 years old, and I'm the oldest of 3 kids, a brother and a sister. Our parents were poor. My mother grew up in the inner city of Baltimore with 5 sisters and no father. Their father was an alcoholic who abused the family and left. My father was a waterman on the Chincoteague Bay, and they met Glenn L. Martin's working on airplanes during the war. So my first 13 years of life, which I have incredible memories still of, were in Baltimore, actually in a town called Parkville, Maryland, which bordered Baltimore. And so we lived there for 13 years, and then my father wanted to move to the country. So we spent the next 6 years in Bel Air, Maryland, which was maybe 25 miles north of Baltimore. I graduated from Bel Air High School, and then I went to college at Drexel in Philadelphia and studied to be an engineer. I got a Bachelor of Science in Mechanical Engineering. Graduated and went to Los Angeles to work for North American Aviation as an aerospace engineer. And I spent 38 years in that organization. It was bought a couple times. It was bought by, first it was bought by Rockwell and then Boeing. So when I retired, it was actually Boeing. I was started off in thermodynamics, which my kids all laugh at. But anyhow, I ended up being a chief engineer at Boeing. My hobbies are watercolor and golf. And some of my kids, we all enjoy golf, seem to. And some of the kids have taken up art. And Sarah's one of them. She's got a talent in art. At age 25, I married Ellie, and she's kind of the star of the book, really. But we had the 8 kids, and people say, "Oh, well, yeah, we're Catholic. We're Catholic."
Or Mormon. People assume Mormon or Catholic, and I was
yeah, that's the common question: Mormon or Catholic, right? Yeah. And they nailed it. I'm Catholic. And maybe that explains 20 grandchildren now too. So anyhow, that's kind of my background.
Oh man. Okay. Then you go into each of those different parts of your life in detail, and you share different stories that I also have to say, I don't know anyone, I've never met anyone that has such a great memory that can recall such detail about all of those things. And I really love that about your book. So anyway, you go into each of that a lot more in your book, but how did this memoir evolve? Was it like a planned goal from day one, or did it grow incrementally with your efforts, or was it something that you had, that someone like persuaded you to do?
It stirs a lot of memories. First of all, I did realize that I do have a good memory, especially of my younger life. Like believe this or not, I can remember sleeping in my crib. I could tell you the material in my crib. I remember,
What?
yeah, yeah. I
What you were what,
remember,
like 2, right? Maybe,
huh?
maybe
Yeah, whatever. I got moved out of that for sure by the time Ernie was born. So he was born 2.5 years later. But anyhow, I remember that. I remember the first time I went to the pub by myself. I remember sitting on the toilet with my mom and dad looking at me, laughing and stuff. And they were so proud. Anyhow, I have very vivid memories of my childhood. But getting back to your thing, your initial question of what led to this, I had never, growing up, I never had written anything except technical proposals at work. And I was, that's one thing I was good at, is a technical proposal.
even in high
Um,
school or middle school, you didn't have any interest really in writing
or
stories?
reading. Pretty much I tried to avoid those. If I had to do a book report, I'd buy a classic comic book and read that real quick and do my book report, So I didn't really enjoy reading much. But after doing the technical proposals, I that's when I took up watercolor. I got moved to a remote location up around the Palmdale area, and a bunch of us engineers went up there, and we had to stay up there during the week and come home on the weekend. So it was a real burden on the family. But at night, I was wondering, what do you do around here? I'm living by myself in an apartment, and I ended up deciding to take a watercolor class at Antelope Valley College.
Well, to back up, I don't know if we mentioned it, but at the time our family was, and mainly still is, in Southern California. So around the Orange County area,
Yeah.
which was how long of a commute for you at that point?
Oh, from Fountain Valley to Palmdale was about 100 and close to 140 miles, I think. So it was right through the heart of Los Angeles. So it was not possible to commute.
Yeah. So then staying at an apartment during the week while you worked, and then you'd come home for Friday night, treat night, movie
Right,
night.
right.
Yeah. But you took up watercolor classes.
Yeah. So yeah, the job was great, but being away from the family was a real penalty. Anyhow, I focused on watercolor I was up there for 6 years, full time, starting in 94, and took up the watercolor painting, and I got fairly decent, and I kept painting. I retired in 2000, but stayed on working 2 days a week so I could be home and just drive up there and stay 2 consecutive days and drive back home. I did that for like 3 more years as a consultant. And then I got pretty good at the watercolor, and I wrote a book, another technical book called the Watercolor Pocket Guide. In fact, I think this is my studio. I have one over here, and let's see. This was my watercolor pocket guide, and it's a useful book. I still teach classes, and people like them. But then,
People that can't see you do, yeah. So the maritime paintings that you do, imagine an aerospace engineer also being a really great artist, and that art, I would say naturally as an engineer comes out as very technical. So your paintings are very, very detailed,
right,
which means
right.
that, yeah, as an engineer, you also probably appreciated the process of outlining the details and the steps to take to make this painting, which turned into the pocket guide. So that was the first time you wrote and published something.
Right.
Yeah.
But that's when things started going to a different direction. My health got bad, and I had to take a lot of drugs for multiple myeloma, and my hands were shaky. And since I like to paint ships and maritime scenes, I was too shaky to do the rigging on boats and things like that. So I made this little tool for myself. And your brothers, Will and Luke, they were baseball players by this time. Mm-hmm. And they were home, before spring training, and they noticed this tool. And
well, hold on a second. We should probably let people know how important baseball is in our family, and still is in our family, because so all 4 of my brothers played baseball through college, and 3 of them, right, were drafted out of high school.
Right,
and
right.
again, out of college. And so, and then at one time, Will and Luke were both playing professionally for the Cincinnati Reds organization. And then Luke was in the major leagues while Will was playing minor league ball, right? Because go ahead and talk on that if you want.
That good background. It's all true. So they noticed this gadget, and now mind you, now here they are with free time before spring training starts up again, and they noticed this gadget and being industrious. In particular, Will, my youngest son, says, "Hey, we ought to patent that thing and sell these things." And I knew what it took to patent things, because I actually have quite a few patents working for Boeing, and North American Aviation and so forth. But he kept talking, and eventually he was making these things, and we did patent it. And he was making these things in the garage, and he was selling them. We actually went on a TV show, Terry Madden's watercolor thing. They asked us to sponsor it.
Yeah.
We had an advertisement on Terry Madden's watercolors every week. And then Terry Madden died. I don't remember the exact sequence of events, but in order to keep marketing this thing, Will says, "We need you to write a newsletter." And again, it's one of those things I felt reluctant to do. I didn't want to do it. I didn't feel comfortable doing it or confident, but I started writing these newsletters once a month.
Right.
And actually, if I started writing stories from when I grew up in Parkville, the first 13 years of my life, with some, we were, I wouldn't say delinquents. We, just fun. It was fun being in Baltimore.
One could say you were delinquents.
Well, we didn't harm anybody or anything. There were funny little things.
Other than yourselves.
Yeah. So whenever I wrote a story like that would have a lesson learned that I could apply to art, I'd always get a lot of comments from people. They enjoyed those stories. And I said, man, they were the only ones I really got a lot of comments about. And it always brought back memories with people. So they'd share their memories when they wrote back to me. So anyhow, I felt like, well, people like those stories. And then I also, in that time, I wrote a book. I said, well, I could write a book for my kids and kind of write what I remember about each of you guys growing up.
Yeah, because you had sort of gained a little bit of confidence.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So I wrote a book for you guys. I think I called it Thoughts from a Grandfather or something. Mm-hmm. And I know you guys appreciated it, or certainly were nice enough to say so. But I enjoyed recalling all those things before I forgot about them. And
it was a huge gift to us. I learned something about every single one of my siblings. And I think everyone gets to some point in their life where they think, oh, I should write a book and I should write down memories that I have. And then you wish you asked more questions about your parents or your relatives' upbringing, but you did that for us and you put it in a book for us that we'll have forever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was fun. It was fun. And I think that's when I decided I had the confidence to, maybe with your response and people's response, I said, I'm going to decide to write a memoir about my first 13 years of life in Parkville. And that was mostly baseball. I realized baseball was kind of a big thing with us in Baltimore. That's why I think we were so close. Everybody in my neighborhood, there was 20 some people my age in our block, and we played baseball together.
It's like a real life version of the Sandlot.
Yeah, exactly. So I wrote that book and I called it the Bat Chuckers, because that's how we started every morning. 10 o'clock in the morning, we all be out there and we chuck this bat and then go like this to see who got first choice of the guys.
So you chucking the bat, like if you're listening on the podcast version of this, so you just take turns putting one hand, like a firm grip on it, and you keep stacking up those hands until who gets
whoever got the last full grip got the first choice of players. So here's 15 kids there lined up, and these two captains, we picked different captains every day, and we chucked the bat, and that's how we started every game.
Jeez. So you're writing this memoir. I know you have a phenomenal memory, but were there maybe parts of it that you needed a little help filling in the gap? Like, didn't you go back east and meet with all your old buddies and
Yeah,
like before you decided to publish it?
Some of the best meetings of my life. I do remember this, after I decided to write that, I went back to Parkville and I called Alberta Wright. Alberta and her brothers, Steve and her brother named Brother. And we all met at on Alberta's coffee. She still lives in the same house as her parents. These parents are deceased, but Alberta still lives. She was 2 doors away from me. And we met at her dining room table for a few hours, and we just laughed and laughed. And I watched, Steve was married. He brought his wife to the meeting, and she just kept laughing because she had never heard these stories either. So I said, wow, I had the confidence I knew I had good material.
Yeah, that you had the potential, the capability of bringing a lot of laughs to a lot of different people, even if you.
Oh yeah. And then they told me Mike and Dick Wentworth, they were the ideas guys. That we followed those guys, and we always got in trouble with those guys, but it was funny kind of trouble. And that's when I looked up Dickie Wentworth, and it's amazing to me that the people I just mentioned, Mike and Dick Wentworth, and the Wrights are still alive. And a few of them, as I go into the book, were in jail, and there was some bad things. But at that time, the first 13 years of my life, it was just fun. And here we were talking, and I talked with Dickie Wentworth, and it was just equivalent. It was just me and Dick for 4 or 5 hours at his house in Phoenix, talking and laughing. So I was convinced I was onto something writing this book, The Bat Chuckers.
It's unbelievable, the stories that you share. Each person is seriously a character out of a movie, but this is real life. So did you end up using all the real names in the book, right?
It's funny. When I kind of got close to the end, I wanted them to proofread it. Mm-hmm. So I sent a copy to Mike and Dick Wentworth and the Wrights, Alberta, Brother, and Steve. And I told them, I said, look, this is my version of the truth. And the truth was much better than things you could make up. And I gave them a choice. I said, look, you can use your own. We'll leave your names in it. I put everybody's real name in it because it was true. To me, it was true. And I told them, you can, if you want, I'll change your name. Or if you want to correct the story, I'll correct the story. Or if you want to add stuff, let me know. And they all responded almost identically. It's like, keep my name.
Yeah. Surprising when you think of some of the stories that you wrote, but
I know. Geez, I think of while we're talking, it's hilarious to me. It's still hilarious. So I wrote those in, and they wanted me to keep their names, and they even had a couple of more details about stories, what they remembered.
Became a little bit collaborative.
Yeah. They opted to keep their own names.
Okay, so wow. Well, that's awesome. And then they helped you add a couple events that you had forgotten about.
Yeah, and it's funny how that works. Some of those events were not my best performances in life, but I put them out of my mind. I just forgot them on purpose or whatever. But yeah, Dickie Wentworth reminded, as bad as Dickie was, he reminded me that I wasn't any saint either. So,
well, thank you, Dickie, for that. Appreciate it. Okay, but so you have this group of the Bat Chuckers that you called yourselves, and the Sandlot Days. But so that became like the first main section of your book, and you probably maybe could have just stopped there with a collection of stories from your childhood. So what made you continue writing?
Yeah, well, the short answer is baseball, because I realized one bond that we all had back there was baseball. And here I am writing this book, and I was, say, 75 or 74. And I realized, I think I was at one of Charlie or Tyler's games or something, one of my grandkids' games. And I realized, my gosh, this baseball is keeping us together as a family. And it was huge with all you guys. And sports in general were huge. You actually played on Little League, Sarah, and where the other girls, the girls didn't play baseball. They may have played a little softball. Sarah actually played baseball. And then, of course, baseball was my bond with the boys for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And now look at this. In today's world, it's the bond with all the grandkids, baseball, certainly with the boys. And now, you know, my sons, Brian, Joe, Luke, Will, they've all been involved in, not Joe yet, but he will be, but they're all involved with their kids in baseball. So I had all these lessons learned growing up in sports. And now I started to see a connection with my growing family, and all the lessons learned in that, it kind of helped me sort through life. So I decided to write that down and document it, you know, because I thought there was a lot of applications to life.
Mm-hmm. And this is maybe a little bit off topic, Dad, but I just wanted to point this out anyway for people that haven't read your book yet, or that don't maybe know you as well on a personal level, that you originally were going to call the book The Bat Checkers. And when you asked me to proofread it and just give you my thoughts on it, I thought it was going to be purely about baseball, but that wasn't the case at all. What I loved about the book is that baseball just kind of happens to be the common thread. It happens to be sort of like the vessel for all these different life lessons that apply to everyone at any age. And maybe they learn them at a certain age or they learn them later, but they're universal and they're timeless. And they just so happen to be presented to you in the form of baseball.
Right.
So I
right.
think it's really cool. It's not a book just for baseball fans. It's a book for seriously anyone like my age, your age, to help them remember things from their childhood.
Right.
For people my age that want to understand better what that time was like and understand their parents better, and then also just be entertained as hell. It's so funny. So I just wanted to point that out for people that might think it's a baseball book. It's not at all.
Yeah, no, in fact, it took me writing the book to realize all the series of events and how they linked up in life through, at the time, I thought they were coincidences or just a stroke of luck or something, or how my jobs lined up or where I was. But I noticed this as I wrote, only until I wrote this book through to the end did I realize there was a purpose. And, you know, you question your purpose in life. And I think Mark Twain said, the two most important days of your life are the day you were born and the day you find out why. And that was what I was realizing writing the book. And my family is my big reason.
Mm-hmm. That's a pretty big conclusion, I guess. Would you say you had any other big conclusions that you've reached by writing?
Oh, sure. I firmly believe that God intervened. If I had just been free to make my own decisions, it wouldn't have turned out this way. So I believe there was real intervention. And I believe that happens with everybody to some degree.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of times we don't realize it. Looking back was a great exercise. So it made my life have more importance. And I think when you're writing, the memories, you focus so much on the stories and trying to get them right, and these memories keep coming back.
Yeah, and they're not exact. Like anyone that knows you knows that you're really funny. You're very loud. You're not a total introvert around your family anyway, but there's a lot of like joy and fun experiences. while that said, you don't exactly like dance around anything. Like you definitely cover the tougher things that you went through with maybe between your dad and your just certain parts of your upbringing. And I appreciate that. And I think that's the way that you tell these stories just keeps them universal and very relatable. And I appreciate that you use them in a way that it's like you're making the statement that they're necessary, like these challenges and like the adversity that you went through, they're necessary for your development. And so I just wanted to also point that out because it's not just a memoir about your life. It's saying, hey, these are things that are probably going to happen, things that hopefully lessons that you'll learn. And this is why they're important for you because they help you discover
Right.
your purpose.
Yeah. And I strongly believe the same. Adversity is necessary to grow through life and to mature, to realize the true value of things.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, there's a lot of adversity. There's a lot of things that are humorous, but that's the joy of life too.
Mm-hmm.
So anyhow, I hope that comes through. Hope that comes through.
I think it does. It's awesome. Dad, do you have any, now that you're done writing your memoir, and we're going to talk about it a lot, but do you have any recommendations for anyone else, since this was a totally new experience for you? And like you said, it wasn't exactly planned. Like you didn't plan to be a writer.
But it was all those coincidences, having the memories, trying to write them down, and then getting validation with the old friends.
Mm-hmm.
All my college buddies have read it and given me comments. And the same thing. I have people I know now that are actually beginning to write their memoirs because this has stimulated that.
Whoa.
Yeah, so it's got value there that I didn't realize. So who knows?
Encourage me. You've gotten me inspired a bit. I've written a couple little memories down, not in like a novel format or anything, but yeah, it's really nice.
Anyhow, yeah, definitely has value. It has personal value and it has remarkably value to other people. So anyhow, maybe we'll get more in depth, I guess, as we get into this to another episode or something.
Oh yeah, baby. Well, thanks, Dad. We hope, okay, back to our audience here, whoever might be listening or watching. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed our first episode and hopefully you'll join us for the next one, which is going to cover the introduction, right?
Yeah, we'll go setting up the remarkable world that us old people were born into, a time so precious, unlike anything today, the United States, right after World War II. And amazing times.
Yeah. And I think it was such a refreshing look at it, one that like a perspective that I've never read before. It was nothing that I was taught in school. It was a really, really neat introduction and a nice way to set up your book. So I hope people read it because it's pretty awesome the way that you did it.
Thanks, Sarah.